Miriam Hayes hadn't eaten since Thursday. She stood outside the iron gates of Caldwell Academy, the same gates she'd walked through every morning for 3 years, holding a cardboard sign that said, "Anything helps." Her uniform was gone. Her locker was cleaned out. Her scholarship revoked. Inside those gates, students she used to tutor were taking finals she helped them prepare for. The security guard, Mr. Delroy Washington, who used to save her a coffee on cold mornings, looked away when she caught his eye. She didn't cry. She just stood there, straight-backed, quiet. What nobody outside those gates knew was that Miriam had been expelled for something she didn't do. And what nobody inside those gates knew what she was holding in the folder tucked under her arm. If you're enjoying this video, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Miriam Hayes was the kind of student teachers remembered 20 years later. She was 22, the daughter of Carol Hayes, a black home health aide from Cincinnati who worked double shifts 6 days a week, and Robert Hayes, a white auto mechanic who died of a heart attack when Miriam was 11. She had his jaw and her mother's stubbornness. Caldwell Academy's graduate program in educational administration was her entire plan, not a backup plan, the plan. She was going to run a public school one day, fix the things that were broken. She'd seen enough broken things. She had a 3.94 GPA, a faculty mentor who called her once in a decade, a partial scholarship that covered 60% of her tuition. Carol paid the rest in installments, sometimes late, never missing. Miriam tutored 4 underclassmen on the side to cover her books. She didn't own a laptop. She used the library. She never asked anyone for anything she hadn't earned first. Then, in the 3rd week of her final semester, 8 weeks from graduation, she was called into Principal Eugene Hartwell's office. Someone had filed an academic dishonesty complaint. They said Miriam had stolen a copy of the senior thesis evaluation rubric and distributed it to 3 students for payment. She had not. But the complaint came with a forged email from her account, a printed transaction record, and the signatures of 2 students she barely knew. Eugene Hartwell, 61, 3rd-generation educator, a white man who kept a framed photo of Frederick Douglass on his wall and believed, genuinely, that it meant something, looked at the evidence and made his decision in under an hour. Scholarship revoked, enrollment terminated, effective immediately. Miriam sat in that chair across from his desk and said 4 words. "I didn't do this." He told her the evidence was clear. She told him to look closer. He thanked her for her time. She had been standing outside the gates for 11 days, not every hour. She left at dusk, took the bus back to the 1-bedroom apartment she and Carol now shared, ate whatever her mother had left covered in foil on the stove, and came back in the morning. She wasn't begging for sympathy. She was waiting. Miriam knew something Hartwell didn't know she knew. The student who filed the complaint, a 2nd year named Brandon Fitch, soft-handed legacy admission, father on the school's donor board, had made one mistake. He'd used a document formatting template that wasn't available to students, only to faculty. Only to faculty who'd accessed the administrative portal after hours. She had printed the metadata. It was in the folder. She just needed someone inside those gates to stop walking past her. On the 11th day, that person came. Dr. Lydia Okafor was 54, the head of Caldwell's educational psychology department, Nigerian-American, sharp-boned and unhurried in the way of someone who had outlasted several institutional crises. She had never been Miriam's professor directly, but she had read Miriam's 2nd-year research paper on literacy gaps in underfunded districts and flagged it internally as publishable. She almost walked past. She had a faculty meeting in 12 minutes. Instead, she stopped, not because of the sign, because of the posture. Miriam was standing the way people stand when they are holding something together by willpower alone, back straight, chin level, eyes steady. Lydia Okafor had seen that posture before. She'd worn it herself once, a long time ago, in a different building. She crossed the distance between them. "You're Miriam Hayes." It wasn't a question. Miriam looked at her. Yes, ma'am. You were Hartwell's expulsion last month. I was. Lydia glanced at the folder under Miriam's arm. What's in that? Miriam held it out without a word. Lydia was 7 minutes late to her faculty meeting. She didn't notice. Lydia didn't make promises that afternoon. She told Miriam she would read everything carefully. She told her that institutional processes moved slowly, and that Miriam should prepare herself for that. She told her that having evidence and having someone believe the evidence were two different things. Miriam nodded. She already knew all of that. What Lydia didn't tell her yet was that she had recognized the document formatting template immediately. She'd filed a complaint about unauthorized student access to that same portal 8 months ago. Nothing had come of it. The complaint had been quietly shelved. Brandon Fitch's father had donated a new gymnasium the following spring. The next 3 weeks were the test. Lydia brought the folder to the Academic Integrity Committee. The committee chair, a thin, careful man named Professor Gerald Sykes, reviewed the metadata, acknowledged it was irregular, and suggested the matter required further internal review before any action could be taken. Further internal review meant waiting. Miriam waited. She picked up a shift at a copy center on Maple Street. She woke at 5 every morning to help Carol with her early client before catching 2 buses to work. She came home at 9, 8 standing at the kitchen counter, and spent an hour each night organizing additional documentation, cross-referencing portal access logs she'd requested through a public records inquiry she'd filed herself, alone, without a lawyer. Carol watched her daughter from the kitchen doorway some nights and didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. She just made sure there was always something under the foil. The witness was a janitor named Curtis Webb. Curtis was 63, black, had worked in Caldwell's administrative building for 19 years. He had seen Miriam in that building at all hours, always in the library, always at the same corner desk, always alone. He had never seen her near the faculty portal room. When Lydia quietly asked him what he remembered, Curtis didn't hesitate. He wrote it down in 2 paragraphs, signed his name at the bottom in careful block letters. I know what I saw, he told Lydia, and I know what I didn't see. He slid the paper across the table and went back to work. On the 26th day after her expulsion, Miriam received a certified letter from Caldwell Academy's Office of Academic Affairs. It informed her that her case had been reviewed and that the original finding had been upheld. She read it twice, folded it, put it in the folder with everything else. Then she called the one person she hadn't wanted to call. A civil rights attorney named James Whitfield, her mother's cousin's husband, semi-retired, who operated out of a 2-room office above a dry cleaner in Dayton, answered on the 3rd ring. Tell me everything, he said. She did. He was quiet for a long moment. Miriam, he said finally, they made a mistake keeping a paper trail. James Whitfield sent 1 letter, not a lawsuit, not a threat. 1 4-page letter to Caldwell Academy's Board of Directors with the metadata analysis, Curtis Webb's signed statement, Lydia Okafor's formal internal complaint from 8 months prior, and a single paragraph at the end that noted calmly, without drama, that the documented pattern of evidence suppression connected to a donor family would be of significant interest to the state licensing board, and 3 specific education journalists he named by title. He gave them 72 hours. They responded in 41. Eugene Hartwell called Miriam himself. He didn't have his assistant do it. He picked up the phone, dialed the number in her file, and when she answered, he said her name and then stopped talking for a moment longer than was comfortable. I looked closer, he said finally, like you asked me to. Miriam stood in the copy center break room, one hand flat on the wall. I know, she said. I failed you. She didn't tell him it was fine. It wasn't fine, but she said, I need my scholarship reinstated, my record cleared, and 8 weeks to finish what I started. He said yes to all 3 before she finished the sentence. Brandon Fitch withdrew from Caldwell quietly the following week. No announcement. His father's name stayed on the gymnasium. Some things move slowly. Miriam graduated on a Thursday morning in May. Carol sat in the third row in a yellow dress she'd bought on layaway. Curtis Webb stood in the back because he wasn't officially invited and didn't need to be. Lydia Okafor watched from the faculty row and didn't clap louder than anyone else, but she clapped longest. When Miriam crossed the stage and Eugene Hartwell placed the diploma in her hands, he held on a half-second longer than protocol required. She looked at him. He had tears running down both sides of his face, straight and quiet, the way rain moves on glass. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. She walked off that stage carrying everything her mother paid for in installments, everything her father left her in stubbornness, everything Curtis Webb signed his name to in block letters, and a folder that had once been all she had. She never stopped standing straight. That was the whole lesson. The system will tell you what you are worth. Stand straight anyway. Keep your folder.